allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Glad to have everybody out here on this beautiful evening. Your guess is as good as mine, what the temperature will be when you come and go. But anyway, we are meeting here on April 17, 2018, 6 p.m. in the County Board office. First, we're going to actually do two different business items tonight. The first will be our levy, laying the levy, as they say. And we had public comment on the levy, and we're going to do that once again. We'll see many comments. Mr. Ellis has had the levy rates posted and available, and I think they've also been in the local media for everyone to see. So at this time, the floor will be open to receive any public comments concerning the 2018-19 tax levy order. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2018-19 tax levy orders presented and approved by the State Auditor of West Virginia in accordance with provisions of Chapter 11, Article 8 of the West Virginia Code as amended. But prior to doing that, before I accept a motion, I entertain that. Mr. Ellis, is there anything further that we need to say at this time?
They're the same as they were on the proposed schedule that we had on March 20th, so nothing's changed.
Okay. All right, so I'll entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Mr. Baker?
Second.
Mrs. Smith? Is that an all yes to approve this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Having done so, I'll now take a motion for adjournment of this statutory meeting. Ms. Curry?
Second.
Ms. Wilkerson? Is that an all yes vote?
Yes.
Okay. So the statutory meeting regarding the laying of the levy has been fulfilled for this year. Yes, it's up to Mr. Ellis and his team. Okay, now let's go to the regular agenda. We'll call the regular meeting to order. Let's start by approving the minutes of the April the 3rd, 2018 regular meeting. Motion?
So moved.
Ms. Baker?
Second.
Ms. Smith? All yes?
Yes.
You approve the minutes? All right. Pink sheet.
He took it from me.
Who's the closest? We have a speaker.
Mr. Seth Neal.
Mr. Neal. All right. Mr. Seth Neal is employed by the Lincoln County Board of Education, Lincoln County High School, in the Agricultural Department. I go through this each time, Mr. Neal, so I will at this time also. Since you aren't formally on the agenda, being the open meeting law, we really can't converse with you. We're going to listen to what you say very closely and attentively.
Okay.
All yours.
All right, so honestly, I've got the task of seeding the football field, well, what's left of the football field surrounding it. To my calculations, working with Mr. Gosney, there's roughly a little over 3 acres that needs to be addressed. I actually looked at it, the whole field and all was actually 7 acres to start with before they started pushing stuff around. Now the football field, that's roughly 1 acre is taken off of that, and then the hillside that they've rolled some stuff out on, so it should be taken care of. I guess more or less, the reason why I'm here is just to more or less update y'all, let y'all know what's going on. We've got, to my calculations, looks like all I'm gonna need is really seed and straw to take care of it, and then the kids are gonna come back and throughout the summertime help me get, well, we're gonna start really in the next month with everything we've got going on between auction and banquet and end of the year stuff. But with that being said, we're gonna have some kids come over after school, well, during school and after school, finish that thing up. Depending on what seed we're end up gonna run with, we're looking at anywhere between 2,200 for seed and straw, to 33. So I mean, it's the magic number that I was told was anything, try to keep it as cheap as possible, but which is definitely on my agenda, but keep it below $5,000. And I mean, that's definitely doable. Now with that being said, we'd have to go in the lines of seeding and then, of course, putting some straw on top of it. Greg did, now mind you, that did not have anything to do with the blower, for the straw that's gonna be, I mean, mind you, we can spread it by hand, but when we have access to a blower for the straw, it'll help that straw go a little bit farther than just going out there and pulling a flake or two and making that go. And shoot, the numbers that I threw out there did include the straw. Usually it said, according to my, what little bit of, experience I've had doing seed and, a little bit of research I've done, one bale will cover a little less than 1,000 square foot. So that should do it with, roughly, well, said 170, 180 some odd bales. So you round up a little bit because you're gonna have, one bale's gonna yield about 30, 40 pounds and, you know, it's in that ballpark. So, more or less, I know that, it's been talked about in previous meetings, whether it be in the meeting or just hearsay. I just wanted to let y'all know that it is getting taken care of. With everything else I got going on, yes, I am pretty scatterbrained a lot of times, you know, trying to be 3 places at once at least, but it is on my agenda and on my radar to get it taken care of. So, I know that, y'all can't really conversate back and forth on that, but, if y'all do have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to get a hold of me, over to the high school on my phone, or email me, or go through Mr. Midkiff, Mr. Snyder, anybody, it doesn't matter to me. So we'll get that taken care of, okay?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was the only person we had signed in, Mike, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's go to our regular reports and presentations. Ray Ellis, our finance director, has a finance update. Mr. Ellis.
Like I always say, I'll try to be really brief. I want to go about this a little bit different than what I have or what I've done in the past. Whenever you came in, you should have had this, which is about 25 pages. It's the financial statements as of the end of March. And, you know, it's going to list the cash and the balance sheet accounts and things of that nature. I don't want to get into this, you know, we don't have a real big cash problem or anything right now. I don't know what the cash balance is of today, but I think it's just a little bit lower than what's here, not much. But it just fluctuates between accounts, so I can't remember what's in the state investment account as compared to what it was last month. But we're okay on this. What we need to talk about is what I'm getting ready to do with the budget. Okay, the levy rates we just approved, $275,000 less than what the original levy call is. And we've had this conversation before, just not as in depth. And that's this page right here, the colorful page that I handed out. As I start the budgeting process, last year we were $143,000 below what the original levy call is, or was. So we took our money out of major improvements or capital improvement fund. We dropped it down to about, I think, $83,000, and we cut professional development some. We did things, we cut from the budget things that didn't affect the everyday life of our employees or our retirees. This year, we're taking a bigger hit. It's $275,000 we have to take out of that original levy. And what that levy call was, I think we had $1,027,000 for salaries and supplements, $420,000 for textbooks, and on down the list that you have in front of you. This year, I think we can go about it a little bit different. Instead of taking away from the major improvement like we did last year, that was a big topic all during the course of the year. How much do we have left in that? After I put in the budgets for the roofs, we're gonna have just a little under $100,000 left in that. Because we hadn't used much, I guess, in the previous years before I got here, and that built up a little bit. But we're gonna be around 98,000, that's what it's an educated guess, within a few $1,000s. I did that calculation not long before I came in here. What I wanna do is the schools get allocation every year. We give them money to buy. With your allocation, what do you buy? You know, you can buy furniture, you can buy stuff for the kids, and there's $420,000 that goes, and we spread that out among all the schools. There's, I think, roughly 5 categories we give allocation to the schools, including library funds, teacher money where they get to spend a certain amount. All the teachers get to spend, I think last year was over $350. They don't all spend that. They don't all use those funds. But over the course of several years, there's some of those allocation categories that Mr. Snyder won't get to keep. In other words, he don't get to roll that over the next year. Okay? What is not allowed to be carried over, in other words, what they don't use and what we bring it back into a big pot of money, not like huge, but there's roughly a little over $300,000 in that we've kept that doesn't go back to the schools. And I'm having trouble remembering what categories it is that we don't allow them to carry forward.
I think instruction.
Instruction, textbooks. So over the years, they've not spent that, we've pulled it back into a pool of money. Well, that's gotten to be, you know, over $350,000. The last count, it can go down a little bit in the next couple of months, but what I want to do is take that pool of money, and it looks like I'm taking $200,000 out of the $420,000 column for textbooks and instructional supplies. That's really not the case. I can take it from there in my original budget, make it look like I took the $200,000 out, but I'll take the money that we had left that we put into that pool and plug it back into this so they're not losing anything. That make sense? We got money that we've collected that they didn't spend. We're just gonna put $200,000 of it back into this category to make up for whenever I do the budget. That's a journal entry that I'm gonna have to figure out. I'll probably have to talk to Birdie. She's probably gonna be the only one that's gonna be able to guide me through that one. But, because that's gonna be a little tricky, but I think we can do that. What that'll allow us to do is not take anything out of our major improvements. In other words, we'll stick another $200,000, so we'll have close to $300,000 whenever July runs around, when it comes around. And I think that was a big concern everybody had. You know, we were working on the football field, we were doing all this stuff, we were replacing chillers and things like that. It was just eating away at that money. If we put that back, maybe that'll help us out a little bit.
Greg, are you kind of finished with that particular topic?
I can be.
Okay, well, my question relates to, you know, the levy call states that we're supposed to spend so much in each one of these categories.
Yes.
Okay. So, like you said, the original, you distributed, is it for the $420,000 annually?
Yeah, that's what was in the original levy when it was put to a vote.
Is that for each year or the 5 years?
For each year.
For each year?
Yeah.
Okay, so you distributed $420 out to the schools, correct?
Yeah.
But you're saying that they didn't spend all of that?
They don't spend all of it, yeah.
Okay. So, now, our obligation is to spend it in those categories. But since they didn't spend it, now, there's something there that provision that permits you, if they don't spend it, to retrieve it, bring it back and not carry it over?
Well, it's used in the same categories, okay? And it's mainly from category B, from the textbook. If they don't spend it, we take it back, but it's there if we need it again. And this is what I was thinking. Next year, if we cut from that, because we have to cut $275,000 no matter what, we can put it right back in with the pool of money that was saved from that exact category. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I understand that it's permitted, if you don't meet the levy call, the amount of money that's generated for the entire levy for a year, that if you don't meet it, then that's an area or a reason that permits you to spend less than the levy call requires.
Yeah, you can build stipulations into there, into each of those categories. If you don't meet that, if you don't have enough money to meet the original levy call, you can put stipulations in there that you're going to do the A or B or C or D, you know, these various and sorted steps, but that wasn't in there. And I don't like the idea of that being in there, whenever we redo the excess levy, because it gives you a little bit of,
Leeway?
yeah, leeway, that's the word I'm looking for, to do what we see fit. Like last year, there wasn't anything in there, so we just took it, in those stipulations, so we took it out of major improvements and staff development, which we weren't using anyway. This year, after looking at this for another year, and looking at that pool of money that we've collected that hasn't been used in, mostly in category B, we can just put it back in there.
And with the justification being you didn't acquire enough levy money to
Yes.
meet the entire amount.
Yes.
But that, I guess that would be similar if you exceeded tax collections for the levy, you would have a little discretion how you were able to spend it, as long as it was spent in one of these categories. You've never got.
I've
had
never
that-
been in that situation.
We have.
I'll be happy to look that law
Well,
up.
I'm just- I think in the past, that there have been occasions where that may have happened. And as long as as long as you spend it in these categories, you have discretion where that might be. But in your tenure, you haven't had that luxury yet.
And it didn't happen a couple of years before I got here either. I'm gonna show you those calculations here in a second.
All right. Okay, all right.
This is just something, and Mr. Meekiff and I, we talked about this, and I talked to Darlene because she keeps track of the allocations. And talking to her one day, and it came up, I don't know, she may have mentioned it. And I thought, well, that's a really good idea, so I went down the hall and talked to Mr. Meekiff. He said, we may not have to take this out of capital improvements or major improvements again.
You're distributing around from year to year if need be.
Yeah, so I think I can make this work. Like I said, it's gonna be a unique situation, but Barry's pretty good about answering my phone, he'll answer my text messages for the most part.
And Ray, we also have step 7 money.
Yeah,
That does the very same thing that this line item does in our levy.
yeah, if we get in a situation where we just don't collect much revenue at all, we have step 7 money, it comes from the state, and I think, how much is it, 678,000,
That's-
something like that?
That's right.
That we got a little bit leeway that we can take money out of that and do different things with it. So, and it kinda does the same thing, we buy textbooks, I think Kevin said he buys most of his textbooks through step 7 funds anyways.
And these are discussions we may have to have or should have when we are developing a levy call for the next 5 years, right?
We've been discussing that at length. And we're thinking that maybe by sometime in July, maybe early part of August, we want to have a work session with the board
Because you might want to
to talk about this in
move some
detail.
of these categories.
Right.
If one is being, or if one is being used, or there's a greater need, you might want to put more in, and other that where apparently isn't being used, you wouldn't put as much in maybe.
Well, we already know what that, if it would pass, what that original levy call would be. And it's the exact same rate as we passed tonight. I've already had that conversation with Guy Brown,
Okay.
and, because I was trying to figure out how in the world he's gonna come up with new numbers for, whenever we do run the excess levy, and he said you have to use the numbers from the last year of the levy before.
That's a projection.
So,
Right.
we're gonna be down we're $275,000 less whenever we run
So the
that.
first year of the new levy, should it pass, would be $275,000 less?
Yeah, it'd be what, close to $1.5 million less in a 5-year period.
Over the 5 years. Okay, good, or not good, but I understand. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Hopefully, everybody understands it. And this, column E, the retiree pension, that 30,000 is just an estimate. I looked at the cost the other day, and we were a little bit below where we were at last year, so it may not be 30,000. We may be able to cut that down. That's money that we have to put back into that account to cover the expenses. That's why it's a positive number. But it may not be, it may be less, it may be 10,000 less. If something could happen, it could be 10,000 more. I will not know that till I close the books.
So you're having to supplement that with other money.
Yes.
That might be
That'll
one of
come
those
probably
that
out of
would
county.
receive new money in a new levy, or additional money in a new levy.
That's gonna take another, probably a bigger chunk of money out
That's what I
of
mean,
it.
you might increase that one as you
We'll have to.
increase the other.
Cost of went up in, 5-year period. And then, K and technology, I put that number in there, and that number could there was a lot left over last year in that account, so I thought we could maybe take some of it. And if we don't have to put as much into the retirees, and we won't take as much out of that, and we can still change our mind. Like I said, last time I was speaking, I changed the budget about 5 minutes before I walked in the door, so we got all kinds of time to change our mind on this, so it's not set in stone. I did this to give you my thoughts and things that me and Mr. Mitchell have talked about. So if you have any time between now and near the end of May, if you all want to revisit this and talk about it, and if you have any other ideas, it's fine with me.
I know this will give us a chance to look at it.
I think I gave you one of these last year, about the time you approved rates. But now, I gotta be Debbie Downer again, like I was, a couple months ago. You remember we were talking the last time about what I was expecting with public utilities tax checks that come in from the sheriff's. It comes from the state to the sheriff's department, and they send out the tax checks. That tax check was greater than what it was last year. It was over $700,000, and I think last year it was about $650, so it was really good. And I got really optimistic really quick because March collections for the April checks have been good. When I go back and I look at the spreadsheet, what I had last year, to what Bertie had the previous 4 or 5 years, that she had this certain spreadsheet, April was a really good month for collections. And if you look, just start at the bottom of this sheet right here, the black and white sheet. If you look at that and just look at the bottom, April tax revenue checks based on March collections for this year and the preceding 3 years, going back to 2015. 2015, the 2 checks I received from the sheriff's office for March collections in our normal current and levy, or excess levy checks that we received, was over $1 million. And if you go to 16, it was down 100,000. You go to 17, it was down 160,000. This year it came in at 435,000, which is almost, $600,000 less than what it was 3 years ago. Jeff made the joke that every time I come down the hall, that there's a dark cloud hanging over top of me. I
Was he
thinking
joking?
No. It comes with bare bad news.
And I was really, that really kind of broke my heart on that one because I was expecting a good check, because March wasn't that bad. March was pretty good. I think looking back at the information that I have, going back to 2015, I can look and see, I got information further back than that, but on that spreadsheet, that's what's really easy to look at. And I can compare months to these previous years. September, we had a good, I think it was September collections, it was an October check that was a little bit higher than others. And that's when I pointed out that previous years' collections was a lot higher than what it had been in other years. And I thought that was kind of odd. So I started looking at the budget numbers. We're gonna hit our budget number in previous year's collections because people have been paying, as you explained that one day. That's the category that's listed on the checks. But being $300,000 less than what we had last year, there is no way we're gonna hit, I don't even think we're gonna come close to our budgeted revenue numbers. That was a big gap there that I'm not sure that we're gonna be able to get that money back. Now, with that being said, I had a conversation with Mr. Midkiff, and he read a report. You want to tell him?
It was in the Gazette, I think it was a week before last, that the state tax collections were down. It was anticipated, you may have seen it too, that they also anticipate that April, May, and June's tax collections are going to be up. And that we may see the state would catch up there before the counties would catch up in terms of whatever was going on there, and that did.
When we get our April collections check in May, whenever I get that, the next board meeting, I'll let you know how it fared. I won't wait till the end of the month. I'll let you know as quick as I can. But that was such a big gap. Now, the top of this sheet, when you look at the fiscal years going 18 and back to 15, I put on that top line, current and excess levy revenue balance in mid-April, which means I've got the utility check, the big utility check's been received, and our March collections that we receive in April's been, those numbers reflect that those checks have been in. And you can see that we're, I don't know, what, 330,000 below last year where we were at. The line below that is the combined total of the current and excess levy budget. And then below that, that's what, in mid-April, that's what was needed in order to reach the budgeted amount. So this year, we need $736,000 in collections up through the end of July. We get to count through July in order to hit our budgeted number, overall number. Those categories will be different. We may hit budget in some categories and be way off in others. Because there's eight different categories in the current and excess levy that we have to budget for. And the total of those was 7.029 million this year. So when you look at 17, 16, and 15, going back 3 years, I put on there the collections after mid-April, and that went from mid-April, that included the last 2 weeks in April, May, June, and July. And you can see how much we collected, so I put on there that if we got the average of the last 3 years, we'd collect $545,000. But you can see in 17, 16, and 15, that we didn't hit budget any of those years, but we got really close in fiscal year 16. We were only 7,000 off. The last year, and last year was an okay year. We had a decent carryover compared to, some previous years. And we were 293,000 off the budget.
But we need to get a little less than 200 just to reach the budget level. Budget level.
No, I mean,
Well, if we've gotten 545, we need to get to 736, is that right?
well, no, that was collections after mid-April. We have to get $200,000 more than average, let's put it that way,
The 545, Steve, is the average of what we got
the previous 3 years.
3 years. 545 is the average of these 3 years. This is what we were budgeted to get. This is what we would predict based on the average of these 3 years that we will get after, from here after. And if we hit that average, then we're gonna be
That's where I like it, that.
190,000 under, if we get the
If we
average.
get.
And based off what Mr. Metcalf read in the paper, maybe that'll happen. Maybe we'll surpass the average.
We can hope.
But anyways, those two checks coming in that far under what we had in the last couple of years was unexpected, at least on my account, because the utility check and March was okay, so I wasn't expecting this. We were just about even with last year. I think we were $10,000 under last year, and then this happened. So I was feeling good about it, and so, other than that, I don't know what to tell you.
You haven't paid
I'm
your taxes.
speechless.
So now you've got the good news you're saving for last, right?
No, that
You're
was.
beating us down.
I started, I don't know, did I
You
have
started
good
bad,
news?
you started bad and you got worse, the longer you
Well,
went.
I don't know if there was any good in there.
No?
Well, I was
Robin
trying to
Peter
go-
pay Paul on one front, and we just are short at least 200,000 on the other, if things go well. All right, we'll get
If
these
we
out.
get within the 200,000, we'll probably still have a decent carryover, because, cash hasn't been a real big problem, so I'm thinking that, again, our directors, and they've all managed their budgets really well, and that goes for transportation and maintenance. I think we're doing a little bit better in those areas this year, at least in maintenance.
So you will use some carryover to make it balance?
Yeah, that carryover, I really don't have to use that carryover to fill in the gaps of this revenue, per se. But what happens when you don't hit revenue, because when you do the budget, your revenue has to match your expenses in that fund. You gotta cover what you're in the hole on your expenses with that. So I won't necessarily plug it into revenue, I'm gonna have to take that carryover and plug it into the expenses.
Right.
It's, gets a little complicated, but,
The simple effect is you will use
I would.
carryover money, no matter how you describe
Yeah.
it, to cover the shortfall.
yeah, and anything we overspend in Fund 61, you know, our carryover's gotta go towards that, you know, so we try to really watch that stuff.
So we
We didn't have a big problem last year.
What we hope then is that the carryover is enough to cover any
I think it will be.
sufficient amount. Then
I
have
think
some
we'll be
more,
okay. Yeah, I would like to be able to carry over more
more than
of our
probably.
carryover. But remember, I told you last year, on June 29th, I think I used $450,000 to plug in where we were in the hole in one day. We're about, I think, 450,000. So I'm thinking that sometime in June, that's gonna happen again. How much, I don't know, it depends on what we play. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that was, we've had conversations about this. Jeff's barred me from his office for a while, so.
Maybe you should just email it.
I don't know if he's read it. Any questions?
He'd come and see you. No, I think we understand. We'll just keep our fingers crossed that those of the state are corrected, maybe the next couple of months, first couple of months.
And I'll keep you updated on this, and if I think the need exists, and, you know, next week to give you an update on this, or, you know, 3 weeks, then I'll do that, and not wait till the end. Okay.
That's good, thank you, Ryan. Okay, next, Mr. Midkiff, with the assistance, I'm assuming, or Mr. Snyder with the assistance, Mr. Midkiff, we're going to talk about some issues at the high school as far as graduation credits and how that policy 2510 revisions affect that.
Yeah, I gave you a heads up, the last one, we were talking about graduation requirements tonight, and, here's your copy. I gave you. And, you know, every year, policy 2510, which is ensuring the quality of education and provides the regulations for all of our educational programs in each of the 3 programmatic areas, is revised. And this past year, there seemed to, well, in all years, there seems to be always revisions at the high school level, but there were a couple this year that were pretty significant. One being, if you look at this, I gave you some handouts. And the one I'm looking at right now is Sean, yeah, you got it. It's just a quick review of the revisions that was made this past year by State Board. The first one that would have impacted what we're doing at the high school level, initially there was discussion about reducing the number of social studies requirements from 4 required classes or courses down to 3. And based upon public comments or feedback that the State Board received, they decided to scrap that idea. So we will continue to have students who will be required to have 4 social studies classes or credits to meet their graduation requirements. The next one listed there is the high school physical education. I think we may have talked about this one night some time back, where now county's going to have the flexibility or be able to have students pick up a PE credit in a variety of different ways, including participation on a sports team, whether it's basketball, football, volleyball, any and all, right? As well as in a dance class or marching band. Trying to think what was the other one, Dana? Was show choir. Thank you, Kirk. We should have show choir. And there's also an integrated online component or piece that schools can tap into to use to give students a PE credit. I don't really, there's notes at the bottom that explains somewhat how this works. There is a training that's coming up in July for PE teachers as well as administrators at the high school level. I guess where all this will be explained in terms of what it's going to look like. But it really opens the door to a lot of different ways for students to pick up that PE credit. moving forward.
But this is not required, it's his option.
Option. And
PE teacher.
the grading scale moved to a 10-point scale. Initially, that was only going to be for next year's incoming ninth graders. Based upon the feedback the state board received, it was determined that they would go ahead and make it for all grades next year. So as a result, we're going to have to go in and revise our grading policy to make it reflect what is now indicated in policy 2510.
So how does this affect, and I read the little note over here that says it will become effective for all credit-bearing courses, both weighted and non-weighted. So how does this affect weighted courses?
You get 5 quality points for an A still instead of 4. But that's not really affect that. All they're saying is if you get an A, you'll get 5 quality points instead of 4, which would be the regular person. Quality points for a B would be 4 rather than 3 if you're in a regular Gen Ed class. That's the only difference.
And how does that account toward graduation with honors? The quality points on top of the GPA?
Because you get, if I take every class I took and got straight A's, I can get up instead of a 4.0 average, I can get up to 5.0 average.
Okay.
Now, the difference is colleges don't recognize anything above a 4.0,
Okay.
but for our purposes, yes.
And it is, in policy 2510 is actually, I gave you a copy of it. It's under this sheet that you're looking at now. And it spells it out in there about the weighted classes and what that should look like, as well as, are we weighting any honors courses?
AP and honors, yes.
And honors. It gives you the option to do both. But the one revision that we need to discuss is the last one down there, and that's the one where the number of credits required to graduate was moved from 24 to 22. And boards have the option to increase that, or to follow state policy 2510, or to increase the number of credits required for graduation. So that's really the crux of what we need to discuss here this evening.
Yeah, are you gonna give us something here that breaks those 22 down?
Yes, and then that's where Dana will come in and can help answer questions.
Well, he's doing it, Dana. For PE, do you require all of the PE credit in a year's time, or 2 semesters?
2 semesters, yes.
Because
Half
back
credit
in,
first semester, half credit the second semester.
in ancient days, you got a quarter a year,
Yes.
you took it every year to get one, right? That's,
2510 says you have to have 1 credit of PE graduating from high school, so,
right. But I mean, but you acquire that in 1 year
yes,
by 2 semesters?
yes.
Okay.
But do you have to acquire it in 1 year?
I think you do, because it's like, in my mind, it's like art, you have the level 1, level 2, I guess of art, all the others have the same thing. It would be tough for me to give a kid 9th grade PE first semester, and then wait till his junior to give him the second part of that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Because it is a continual thing, we think. And we've always done it that way. I don't know if that's right or not, but we've always done that first and second semester of their 9th
It
grade year.
takes 2
actually.
semesters
Yes.
regardless.
So, right, I don't know if we have an answer to this, or if we have to ultimately decide this at some point. But this reference to being able to pick up PE credits from participation in scholastic sports. So a freshman who plays football only, his freshman year, he starts in August, he finishes up in October. Does that person get a full 1 credit for participation in football?
According to this, yes.
Okay.
And I think if you look at the, because I think some of the questions were they getting the 8,100 minutes? That's, well, that's a magic number, I don't know why. But if I start football in August the 1st, and go till, it's the first week of November actually, count all your practice times, count all your game times,
Okay.
it's pretty close. It's
Well, I
pretty
used to
close.
see that 3-4 hours a day, but you used to go 2 hours,
Yes,
2 to 2.5
days,
hours,
Yes,
2 a days in,
Yes.
August, so
yeah,
you're getting a week's worth in 1 day.
yes. Now, I think the difference is they have to be, start day 1 and finish the last day. They can't quit like a day before. It has to be beginning to end to get the credit.
Yeah.
And that'll all be spelled out in detail in training, is my understanding. It's gonna take place sometime in July.
What if they get injured?
That's a good question. Hopefully we'll learn about that in the training, because they don't probably go to PE class,
I
I'd
mean,
say.
there's so many questions, I mean, we don't have answers. We don't have answers.
Well, would it be any different than a student who has a
PE class?
non-sports related injury in PE class?
Yeah.
And
Did you give them
Is that-
another assignment?
Yeah,
Maybe.
I love the bleachers.
Make them watch videos on, you know,
There is-
diet and exercise, right?
There is the
Is the
online piece that and I haven't even seen it. I don't know what it is, but
That
there is online.
online piece is hard, really hard. PR took it, and I couldn't even do it, so, being a nurse. It
All
was-
that, well, it requires that, but it also requires the instructor to have to monitor all that.
It was hard.
And I spoke to my PE instructors, and they were, I won't say reluctant, but they were reluctant.
Well, I can see
Well,
why.
we don't, you know,
Yeah.
we're not sure how that piece is gonna work. either.
Okay, Carol, give me 20.
This was just kind of thrown at us
Yes.
without, you know,
But we're not going to make any decisions on that until you go through the training, correct?
right, yeah, until we know more.
You don't really make any proposals for us to have to decide on. And right now, it's like making a decision with no foundation to make one if we had to.
If you'll look at policy 2510 over on page 13, that's where the high school requirements begins. Page 13. Chart 4, foundations for high-quality, developmentally appropriate high school programming, grades 9 through 12. And it says 22 credits are required, 18 of those are prescribed, and 4 personalized.
Can we go down each one of
Explain
Yeah.
what that means?
Yeah, what they're saying is that you have to have, obviously you have to have English 9, English 10, English 11, and English 12. So they're your 4 English credits.
Okay. Must you have those in separate years, or can you have them 2 in 1 year?
We've never had 2 in 1 year. No, we had a person take an AP course.
No, I mean, can I take 11 and 12 in
No,
the same
it's
school year?
sequential though.
Well,
In prior years, we
well,
haven't been able to, but we're gonna get to
Well,
that.
and I want to go back because 2 weeks ago, I didn't mean to tell you, Phil, I did. When Mr. Curry asked me about being able to graduate early. Because we, at one time, we had a policy, this goes back several years ago, and there was discussion about abolishing that policy. I went back the next day after our board meeting and looked through my notes. I still had that folder of all that information in it. And it was on the list. I even asked Dana, there was a situation, and I won't go into detail, that came up that kind of caused us to move or think that we were going to move in that direction. However, when I got on our county policies, our website, and looked, we do have an early graduation policy that in my mind would allow or enable a student their junior year to double up and take English 11 and English 12.
Well, but not if you don't permit it.
Right, but but we do have a policy in place.
But first, the board would have to permit taking 2 English courses in the same year.
Right.
And I don't know how you take, well,
It goes back to the Art 1, Art 2. You can't take Art 2 unless you take Art 1. So you have to have those skills in the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade classes.
Prerequisites.
Yeah, the prerequisites to go to 12th grade.
well, but English, you do different things at different grade levels,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Yes. I mean, back about 30 years ago, the board permitted 2 English courses in the same year to the objections of the superintendent.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it's not permitted any longer.
Well, I can remember when I was teaching at the high school. This is probably 15, 16, 17 years ago. And a young man who was a senior, you know where I'm going with this,
I was thinking the same
came
thing.
to me the first day of school with his schedule. He had English 9, English 10, English 11, and English 12. And he looked at me and he said, Mr. Mickey, he said, they expect me to pass 4 English classes. He said, and I couldn't even pass 1.
That's the reason I'm
You
in
just
this
have no
position.
kid, I mean, he's a great kid. And he just kind of, are we live?
Yeah. It's not live, it's recorded.
Yeah, anyway,
We're
he
not
said-
streaming.
He just looked at me and he said, honestly, he said, how in the hell am I supposed to do this? I said, what's his name? I said, I don't know. I said, I'm gonna see what I can do though to help you. But yeah, there was a time.
Well, that's why I made it, because I think the same logic of that young man. If I can't get through English, one of these English courses, how am I gonna get through it in the same year?
But you're not talking about that student typically.
No.
When you're talking about a student that wants to try to graduate early, you're talking about a student that is exceptional in a lot of areas. And is, I mean, in my mind, this hypothetical student is able to get these credits by putting forth extra effort during years 1, 2, and 3, and is able to then, if they have that maturity level, to do this kind of work, to be able to go ahead and start college or a career in
Well,
it.
you know, that goes back when I was teaching at Hamlin as well. I taught AP, or I taught the calculus course, and the only way you were gonna get in that calculus course
If you
was
have
by
prereqs.
doubling up and taking geometry and trig.
Right,
They're, you know, they're same year.
yeah,
So they know students knew that, and, you know, every year, you know, I'd have a group of sophomores that were in geometry and trigonometry.
yeah.
And I agree with you. There are exceptions to the rule, but I believe there would be 9, the example that Jeff gave opposed to 1 that you gave.
Right.
The majority are there to try to get their credits.
But
There
Jeff
are
was
kids
talking-
that could do it.
Jeff was talking, we only had one person that actually wanted that to happen, and that was many, many years ago.
Well, you had one, and then Bill,
Yes.
when Bill's principal, we had
Yeah.
one too.
The majority of folks that I get that want to move on are hardship cases. I mean, they want to take all they can take because they have to go to work, or they have to raise kids, or something like that. That's what I'm getting a lot
What do
of.
you mean, they've acquired it, would have
They
acquired?
want to, they would like to go on above and beyond, because I need to get out of high school, because I need to work, or I need
You're
to get
saying they
to
want to
school.
take more credits so they
Yes.
can maybe
Get out.
finish early,
Yes.
mid-year or something?
Yes. Yes.
Well, no, if they on track to get their credits, but they don't need a full day their senior year, can they go a half a day?
They actually write me a letter, the hardship, I give that to Mr. Midkiff, and Mr. Midkiff makes that determination.
We may have 1 or 2 of those a year, not very many. That's legitimate. I mean, you know,
Now, what are Fred's circumstances again now?
a kid that would only go a half a day.
Well, but
If they can get their credits
Oh,
in a half a day.
So they're saying if they might only need 3 credits, something they get in the morning,
Name 3 classes their senior year, 2 classes.
and they can still get the requirement,
Yeah.
and then in the afternoon do something else, like go to work or something.
I mean, looking at what we require here, assuming that you keep prereqs and, excuse me, in place, you would only have to have your senior year in English, and math, and social studies. If you've gotten your full, what was that, 8 credits per year in the 3 prior years, that would be 24 credits. You only need 22 now, but you need these 3 in English, math, and social studies, because you have 4 years of that. So, in theory, any student that's got their full 8 credits in their freshman, sophomore, and junior years, a lot of students only need these 3 these 3 required classes to graduate with, well, it'd be what, I'm gonna say 24 plus 3 would be 27 credits.
Well, now, in Heathers County in Kentucky, they required 26 credits to graduate. Kiara just goes to 1 class in the morning for her English, then she leaves there and goes to college the rest of the day, and then she works the evenings. That's all just.
But she's got accumulated enough to help in the first 3 years.
Yep.
That's great.
Well, and there's no reason, if you, whomever allows it, that we couldn't have students doing the same thing.
That way they get a jump on their
You talking about
college.
go to
Yeah,
college?
I think in policy it said, we do have kids that
Yeah.
take dual credit. I think
Yes.
it says it has to be in a dual credit
Yes.
format.
Well, that's where.
What about you, why wouldn't we allow students who have gotten 24 credits in their first 3 years, or 19 credits for that matter, since the requirement is dropping to 22 unless we decide to keep it at 24 or even to raise it, why wouldn't we allow a student who needs only these 3 credits in their senior year to go to high school in the morning or the afternoon and go flat out to college the other half of the day, rather than taking a dual credit or AP class?
That's the situation you had, right?
Yeah, we do.
We allow that to
We
happen.
still do that.
Okay,
We do that.
That's when I guess we're gonna get into this page. in a
Yeah,
minute.
that's the early graduation. You have a copy of that policy, which doesn't really say a whole lot.
And Bill, that doesn't affect their eligibility to play sport, so they're not
Go to
full.
school half a day. We just have to
Half
have
a day.
So if I graduate in December, my basketball season's over.
You don't show up second semester, you don't play basketball, all right?
Might need that PE credit.
You know, in counties, high schools that have block scheduling where they're offering, you know, they may have be able to take English 9, the first semester, and English 10 the second semester. That sort of thing kind of, you know, leads to,
But if they have block
if
scheduling.
they have block scheduling, it's not something we played around with it a few years back. It didn't work very well. So. But anyway, you're looking at the, on page 13, the graduation requirements. And,
Now, have they gone back in math to the traditional,
we started transitioning this year, with our ninth grade students, so they're taking Algebra 1 this year instead of integrated Math 1. Next year, we'll offer Algebra 2 and Geometry. The students who are in an integrated pathway, we have to allow them the opportunity to finish that pathway. So we will have seniors and, I don't know, maybe a few juniors that would still be in that pathway, but after next year, we should be full out a traditional math pathway again. So, you know, the issue that we ran into, they can speak to it better than I can, is, you know, colleges and universities, particularly outside the state of West Virginia, accepting those credits because it showed up as a Math 3 credit or a Math 4 credit. And, you know, what are those courses?
Even the National Clearinghouse wasn't recognized it. So kids that wanted to go play sports in college wouldn't be recognized as a course.
So it becomes such an issue, the state board, you know, that's finally they decided, well, you can offer both, or you can offer either or. It's really up to individual school districts, what you do, and everyone. This was a movement across the state. Everyone is moving back to a traditional math pathway. But one thing which is new, that's indicated, I think, on that first sheet I gave you, is that beginning next year, students have to have a math class each year. So even if they have all their credits, let's say their senior year rolls around and they already have their 4 math credits, they're still required to be in a math class their senior year. That was a late addition to the policy. So every year in high school, you have to have at least 1 math class.
you have to have it all year? I can't graduate early then.
Well,
No, if you weren't in school that senior year, then you wouldn't be proud to have a math class.
yeah.
But
Well, I'm going to graduate in December, graduate early.
you have to graduate a whole year early or not at all. Right?
Well, I don't know, that's what I'm saying, if you're,
Some didn't anybody graduate in December.
that's,
You didn't have that, the student didn't graduate early, right? And the one that we
Yes.
did not.
No.
I can't recall a time since high school opened anyway.
well,
that
it
we've had a
happens, I
student
know it
graduate
happens in other places.
It does, but we've not had that happen.
We
And
probably never sat down with the students when they came in or were coming in as freshmen and explained this as an option to them. Because no one seemed to really know about it. I mean, and even you, and I'm not questioning your knowledge on it, but when the issue came up, you had to go look to research it to make sure that it was allowed.
What changes, changes
Yeah.
every year.
The policy
Changes next year.
2510,
Changes every year.
a few years ago, we had 4 groups of kids
Yes,
over there,
graduating
and all of them under different graduation requirements.
Yeah.
It was
Still like that, unfortunately.
it was
But I
chaos.
mean, getting back to, well, we haven't gotten to early graduation here.
Let's go ahead and look at it.
Is that saying that this person is gonna finish in 3 years and not gonna be going half a day?
That's what it says, and it says that the student will have to submit a letter to the principal to graduate early by the September 30th of the year in which they wish to complete their graduation requirements.
But in
So
that,
that'd be their junior year.
well, so I mean, they're gonna have to acquire the 24 or whatever it is credits by
Right.
the end of the junior year, not the senior, right?
Right. Yeah, they have to get it all in by the end of their
By the end of the
junior
junior
year.
year. See, I was thinking of a scenario of someone who, you know, they need a credit or 2, whatever it might be, and they were gonna be a senior, and they were just gonna go a couple of classes you know, to get those. I don't know how they get the whole credit without going all year, and then in mid-year be finished.
Right.
Okay.
You don't only get a half credit there, though. I mean,
Right, and we get full credits, whole credits at the high school.
I'm gonna take a period, first period, I'm gonna take PE 1, then the second period, I'll take PE 2, build upon each other. And have the PE teacher monitor.
We won't allow that.
it's, you know, just thinking back, you know, even when I was in high school, I mean, we had, I think there was 2 students when I was in high school that I know of graduated early. While I was at Hamlin, we had 2 or 3.
Was that because they were academically?
Yeah, I mean, they were definitely gifted students that they had credits already by the time they got to high school. I mean, they had band and music, algebra, 1, some of them algebra 2, before they even started their 9th grade year. And but the system was set up that way at the time, for that to happen.
Before they got their 9th grade year?
Now, you know, we don't allow students, rarely, and it has to be through the gifted program for them to be able to take an advanced course in middle school.
So they can't obtain a credit until they get the 9th grade.
Right.
Normally.
So it made it a little easier, the path to get there was easier back in those days, because they could start high school their 9th grade year and have several credits already under their belt.
I think the little girl we talked about too, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, is this, she actually wanted to take all of her college classes, her freshman classes, and allow those freshman credits to count as high school credits. It's always, you can do a dual credit and get college credit for a high school class, but she wanted to actually enroll in Marshall, get those freshman classes, and what grade that was, allow us to transcript those as her 12th grade classes. And that, the State Department, their head blew up, I think. No one can answer the question, so that's why we started this whole process of early graduation. What if we have that situation again? So, I think that's how that occurred.
I may have misunderstood something here, but did you say you had to have math all 4 years?
And that's now required.
How do you graduate early then?
Well, that just
They
says
got
if you graduate early your junior year, you still just have to have a math class.
Come
that
back
year.
next year and get it?
No, it just says you just have to have one every year that you're in high school.
Oh,
So their
okay,
junior
okay.
year, they may, you know, if they're gonna graduate early, they may have 2 math classes
Okay.
What about English?
Same
and
thing.
2 English classes, possibly.
You-
I mean,
I mean-
they have to double up somewhere.
Looking at these requirements, any student that wanted to graduate early, to get these mandatory 4-credit classes, would have to, in one of the 3 years, take 2 of those classes.
And 2 minutes.
No, they'd have to take 2 Englishes, 2 maths, and 2 social studies.
Not math.
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause there's 4 credits.
Four
required
maths, 4 English, 4 social studies. So you would have to take 2 maths, 2 Englishes, and 2 social studies in one of those 3 years. You have to take,
You split up 9th grade, take 1, 2.
well, 9th grade, you take your 2 Englishes, 10th grade, take 2 maths, and 11th grade, take 2 social studies.
But do you
Or
let
like-
them do it? No.
Not now.
And that was the reason why, going back, and that was why we were under state control, that there was this discussion about abolishing that policy, and I'm not so sure that it didn't happen. I had planned on coming down this weekend and going back and looking through some old
Abolishing
minutes.
the early graduation?
Yeah, you know, it's possible that it could have happened. We had issues with Neola at the time when we were trying to revise our policies, things we thought was revised and didn't get revised. And, policies that were abolished or maybe newly created didn't make their way in. So every time it seems like we start looking at our policies, we discover, you know, something that maybe didn't happen the way we thought it was going to happen, or I don't know. It's been a challenge, right, Bill? So anyway, that's something we probably need to come back and look at a later date, is early graduation.
Can we do that sooner rather than later?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just be blunt. I have a daughter that is exceptional, and she is fully capable of doubling up on required classes and getting an A in all those classes and graduating early, moving on with her life. And she, not from her daddy, but from, I guess, where we talked about at a board meeting and Sean broadcast it or something, she heard about this and has been all over me,
Right on.
saying, look, Dad, I'm ready to move on with life. I'm capable, she has a maturity level, and Dana, Dirk, you all know this child, I'm not bragging on my child, she has the ability right now to move on and go to college as a sophomore. I mean, the ability to learn and the maturity level in a lot of ways. I'm not saying I advocate it, because I think age makes a difference, I think experience makes a difference, but this child is capable of doing it, and we ought to be giving children like that the opportunity to do this if they want to, and if their parents agree it's in their best interest. So I have some self-interest in this.
Especially if they're bored.
Well, but all this is gonna, you're gonna have to establish your credits and all these other prerequisites before you ever get to that to see if the person can obtain that. But now, these graduation, the number of graduation credits. Now, for a student that's a freshman right now, do theirs remain 24?
Yes. You talking about current freshmen?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
24.
what we're talking about are students that will be ninth graders next year.
Right.
We're not talking about those that are currently enrolled.
Right.
There are, all of them there required to have 24, no matter what grade they're in?
Yes.
It hadn't fluctuated?
First time, yes.
Okay, because I didn't know if it's 24, they got 28 or something. So these are new students that come next year, okay.
And my thought, let me just give you, I did have to talk to the staff about this. It's about 50-50. They always come up with, well, you're taking away the rigor from the school. Well, are you using that as a noun or a verb? The rigor doesn't mean more or bigger. You know, what you do in your class and what you do in your classroom. We still have to have the 4 science, we still have the 3 science, the 4 math, the 4 English. So those 18 credits are always gonna be there regardless of what you're talking about. That's not gonna change. Administrative team, they were for the change also. And for me personally, our grade card, I guess, is what you call it, when the state determines whether or not we're doing what we're supposed to do as a school system, graduation is one of those boxes we have to check off on.
And one of the accountability.
Yeah, so in my mind, the more kids we walk across the stage, the better off it's gonna be for us as far as those grades. Now, will we have a few more students walk across the stage with 22 credits than size 24? Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I shared with the board 2 weeks ago, the federal requirement, that by 2020, we'd be at 90% graduation. 95% by 2030.
So I understand that rationale, but my concern is, and has been for many years, our expectations are gone down. We've lowered, and this is for 30 or 40 years, and this will, I'm sure seen it. Our expectations of those students have decreased. What I expected if I'm an English teacher, for instance, if I know that this student here is going to take 2 English classes, I may not demand as much of that class as I would if I knew they were only going to take 1. I know that was an argument years ago, because we had some English teachers that were adamantly opposed to taking 2 in 1 year because you can't do it. Because, my class is going to be such, you don't want to try to do that. Others thought that they could do it. But that's my only concern is, and with any of these, I look at the state board requirements. We've lowered the grading scale, or not we have, the state has, in essence. That is a lowering of expectations. If you had to have a 93 to get on A, I gotta work a little harder. You drop it down and you can, when does it end? That lowers expectations. Decreasing the number of credits, in my mind, lowers expectations. There's several other things that they've done. The 180 school day, there's allowances being made. Well, you don't have to have 180 days. Lowers expectations. I see a diluting of the system myself.
And, and a lot of what's driving this is, legislature, state boards looking at what other states are doing. And they look and they see that our students, our high school students, have this grading scale, 93 to 100 is an A. And 49 other states, grading scale is 90 to 100 is an A. Well, those kids in those other states maybe are not getting the same grades that our students are, and they're beating us out for scholarships. I mean, that's part of what's at play here.
If they play it just on their grades that they receive, I'd be as much concerned or more concerned as how they scored on the SAT or the ACT or these performance tests. Because just what grade you get isn't a very good.
It's a lot of scholarships, though. It's
But if you've seen, which I saw personally, state-to-state comparison of students who go to college and students that come from one state where their expectations, unbeknownst to some of the students, were much higher. And they went to a place to where they were now being compared with other students that it didn't take long to realize that, they weren't comparable with them. And then, those other students may have gotten higher grades. Expectations have to be higher. Go ahead, Jeff.
Because I mean, the questions that you raised, I mean, these are questions, you know, that as superintendents, we've raised as well. I know there was a gasp went out across the room when we met in December, and we found out that the graduation requirements were going to be reduced. I mean, I don't think there was anyone in that room, man, that night. I thought that was a good idea.
Are there counties that you're aware of that have, that require more than 24?
Yes, and I've polled, you know, talked to superintendents in our area. There are some counties that are on 9-period days, you know, those kids are getting 32 credits a year. They have 28 credits required to graduate. Some counties that have a same schedule we do, or periods of the day, are staying at 24. That was what they had initially. Others are moving and they're going to follow the state policy. They're
Now,
going to
what we
22.
have at Lincoln County High School, you have 8 periods, but you only get credits for seven of them.
Each one of those periods is lunch,
So you can get 28.
28.
Theoretically. But some schools that have 9 credits, they can 8 for us, right?
32 if you have 9-period days.
Now, I just have to say this to support Mr. Priestley on one point that he made, because I vividly, when I was in school in Lincoln County, at one point, the grading scale was 90 to 100. And it jumped from 90 to 100 to 93 to 100 to get an A. Do you know what I did? I knew every test score I had, and I knew that I had to study just a little bit more. Because that 3 points, there's a lot of difference in a 90 and a 93 in terms of how you have to do through the course of a semester. So for me, the effect was exactly what Mr. Priestley said. I had to work a little bit harder if I wanted to get that A than I had to work before. So there isn't anything he said that I don't agree with wholeheartedly. With that said, move on.
But we don't have a choice about that, or do we?
No.
The grading scale, right?
Yeah, grading scale.
But I mean, with what you said, if our students are being compared unfairly with other students and are losing out on things because we have a more strict grading scale, then I agree. I think the times that happens, I think SAT, ACT scores are much more important on college admissions, much more important for scholarships than is GPA. I think the times that a half point or a half of a tenth of a point difference in GPA is going to matter so little in terms of qualifying for a scholarship, but it could happen. I'm like Mr. Priestley, I see that we're giving our students less. When you expect less of a large group of people, the large group of people are going to do less. There may be certain people within that group that are going to excel and continue to perform well beyond expectations. But the bell curve, I forget who I was talking about a bell curve.
Right.
The bell curve represents the average population where we expect most people to fall. Most people are going to conform to that bell curve in terms of giving the amount of effort that is required of them. So,
Most in the bell curve, most people are average.
yep, that's the point of a bell curve.
Well, but in today's society, that's not
Skews
necessarily the way
it.
it's construed.
But that was kind of how it was framed in the superintendent's, and part of the rationale for moving to the 10-point scale. Initially, it was just going to be next year's 9th grade students, but, they decided to go ahead and just implement it full on. And then, I think I'd mentioned to you at the last board meeting, the rationale for reducing the number of credits required for graduation. One was federal law, now this requirement, and high schools are held accountable, school districts are held accountable if you don't meet that 90% graduation rate by the year 2020. So that was part of the rationale for reducing the number of credits required. That other states, West Virginia was only one of either 4 or 5, I can't remember how many said, states in the country that required more than 22 credits. That in fact, most states required, I think the magic number was 18.
Our major concern then is the number of students that graduate, not what they
Not what they
learn.
know.
Right, right. And then the other
Enough
piece
of
of
them walk
this,
across each day.
and this is this kind of got by me. And I know it did for me when I heard this part of the spiel, was that this is going to enable some CTE students to be able to be dual or double completers, as well as your college-bound students who, based upon the current graduation requirements, wouldn't be able to be involved in a CTE program. That by reducing it down to 22,
Okay.
that's going to give those students an opportunity to get in a CTE program, maybe even be completers, and that would give them something else, possibly a skill they can fall back on, and, if they decided college wasn't, for them, so.
You kind of have like a minor or something.
Right,
so to speak.
right.
Because you're only talking about 2 credits. I guess I don't think I explained myself well. You still have to take off English, math, science, and social studies. So you're only talking about 2 credits actually, from 22 to 24 credits. If I can get 22 and graduate, that's going to leave me 2 credits, probably a CT, because those are double block classes anyway that I can take. And like you said, maybe be a minor. Maybe I go to college and say, look, I've got a class in, agriculture.
Would you have to take that, if you, in that scenario, every year, those 2, or just in one given year?
We struggle with electives for our seniors right now. We struggle. There's very few elective seniors, but I'm sure your daughter was the same way. This would actually open up our CT program to be electives. Because let's think about it, when you're an 18-year-old kid, do you really know what you want to do? I mean, I want to be a brain surgeon.
Well, you should learn those skills.
Yeah, so it gives them an opportunity to, hey, I am college bound, but I got these 2 periods, maybe I should go try that VOAG program or that welding program to see if that's something that I may have an inclination for. And I think with the 22 credits, it will actually make that happen. But if it's, you stay with 24, then I've got to take what I've got to take and move on.
You can't take, well, I don't know what they call it anymore, you can't take shop classes.
No.
Yeah. So anyway, that was, they sold us on those virtues of the rationale to move to 22. And again, I know as I've digested what was said and came back and talked to Dana, talked to the other administrators, talked to the counselors and some teachers, I got a feel that this was something that was good. That what was one considered moving to 22 credits as the graduation requirements. I've not really heard, I don't think that I've heard anyone, unless you have, that
So we were mixed and we talked about it.
with your leadership
Yeah.
team.
There were, of course, the people who've been in the system for a long time, they were, still, the classes are the same, still English 12.
So I really don't understand. Currently, we require 24 credits to graduate.
Yes.
Why couldn't a student right now that has their 4, 8, 12, 15, not 4, 8, 12, 15 mandatory credits?
As a senior you're talking about?
Yeah, as a senior, why couldn't they take a CTE course? Because it has to be a 2-year course?
Yes.
Okay, when you said double blocked, I thought that meant you would take
Well,
2 classes
If I'm
in the morning.
already taking CT, and let's say I want to be a double credit, I can get my junior, senior, when I'm taking Let's Go Ag. If I have those 2 other courses, I can maybe pick up a welding. We're talking about ag mechanics. If I get a ag certification and pick up welding, who's to say I couldn't go into an ag mechanics post-high school graduation?
But students right now, why can't they do that right now?
Because they won't be completers. We've got, and I'll use the ag program, we've got 1, 2, 3 VOAG 1 programs right now because those kids have signed up for that.
But they have to take those courses for more than 1 year? Is it 2 years?
Yes, 2 year be a
Okay,
completer.
2-year program, okay.
Yes.
But again, on 13, starting on page 13, it spells out the credits needed. So you need 4 credits in English Language Arts to graduate, 4 credits in math. Again, you have to have a math course every year that you're in high school. 3 credits are required for science. I think that used to be 4. That was a change back in, I think, 2013, policy changed. Social studies remained at 4 credits. And then over on page 14, it talks about the PE credit. They have to have a health credit to graduate, 1 art credit. And then, and Dana, you can talk about the PEP,
Yeah, that's
the
what we're talking-
verbiage, the
yeah.
verbiage change.
Yeah, that's
you know.
your personal plan. For example, I'm gonna be a graduate with in art or something like that. You have to pick up 4 electives. It could be Art 1, it could be dance, it could be anything that's fine art. If I choose to go with the nursing pathway or something like that, to pick up maybe the nursing class with Joanne. Each student has their own individual course that they have to take to be a graduate.
Is that kind of like, that's their major, so to
Yes,
speak?
yes, yes. We call it PET now.
They've changed, all the
Your
verbiage
personal
changed. What we know.
Educational plan,
Not
your
the same
PET.
anymore.
Concentration.
Concentration.
Yeah, I think that's the word.
Yeah, so when you get to down to, after you've taken the arts, you've now gotten 18 at this.
And we left out foreign language. Many colleges don't require foreign language, but many do. So we tell students, if you are college bound, make sure you contact that college to see if they have to have a foreign or a world language, how they call it, world language, or foreign language, to be able to go
How
on.
do they know what college they're gonna go to?
That's the point.
Fewer colleges and universities are requiring.
If you're at their office.
They should be more required.
Just the opposite, right?
I mean, just-
Anyway, you can go on through page
But
14.
but I mean, you've got on page 14, after the arts, that person would have gotten 18 credits, right?
Right.
Should have, yes.
And then they have to, under this, they would have to have 4 more.
Right.
Based on their concentration, yes.
2 could be the personalized plan, or I guess 4 could be that matter.
Well, career cluster is what they call it, so the career cluster of the program.
Now, what is it, if, right now, those that are having to take 24 credits instead of 22, where have the 2 been deleted?
We could actually,
Where,
It's just 2 less electives they'd have to take.
is that what, are they electives?
yeah, actually, that would stay the same, but I wouldn't need those to graduate for us, what I'm saying, I guess.
Well, I'm just saying, if you go from 24 to 22, where are the 2 being subtracted from? Electives?
Yeah, that'd be electives, yeah.
You
Requirements are-
you have 18
Yeah, you have-
18
you don't have
hours that
choice.
you have to have regardless, and then, right now, you have to have an additional 6 hours somewhere. And what we're saying, if we adopt the 22 hours, if you only have to
All
have an
electives.
additional 4 hours somewhere.
Electives, just
And
electives.
you could focus that in an area of study that was interesting to you,
Yes.
or you could try CTE for 2 years under the new program, because you need less credits.
And you could get, if you went all 4 years, you could get 28.
Go to 20.
That's it.
Could I add something?
Yeah, beyond, go ahead.
You're a veteran of the
Well-
classroom.
Well, the CTE, if you look at the class that comes in the 9th grade from all these schools, you'll have 200, 10, 15, 20. But if you look at the 9th grade class, there'll be 275. Because in 9th grade, a lot of kids fail classes. They have a tough time adjusting, especially if it's math, it's double block, that's 2 credits. They fail another one, and then you get up to your senior year, say you're in CTE. You have these requirements you have to do, and you may have failed in English or a math or something, and it'll knock you out of your CTE class because you have to take the requirement. That's a problem too with having those, but I'm
With
gonna
having
say,
what, Bill?
of having 24 credits to graduate. If they fail a couple classes or 9th grade and it's a double block, they get up and they may need this other class to finish, be a complete or vocational, but it's not, but they haven't passed that English, so they only have, or at math, so they gotta have so many slots to plug in these classes.
Even though they had the opportunity to get 28 credits.
Some, a freshman takes even up to their sophomore year to get adjusted sometimes.
That's our biggest failure is the 9th graders, by far.
But the other side of that coin,
But there's a 4 credit leeway is what I'm
yeah,
saying.
the other side of that coin is if we go to 22 credits, we better figure out something to do with those seniors if they're there. Some kind of rigor, some kind of college, something,
If you go
because
to
if they,
22 or go to 24.
if we go to 22, because that's gonna be more options, that they don't have to study, they don't have to do anything, and like you get lazy that senior year, and you go to college, you forgot how to study, you forgot how to work, and you pay for it. I mean, there's 2 sides of it. I mean, I can see that we have to figure out some way to have some rigor and some things for those seniors, or they're going all on their face when they go to college.
That's why I like the idea of having a major and a minor in CTE.
We have the ability to do virtual classes too for our seniors, or for anybody actually, but mostly our seniors because they have no
Well, in their senior year now, they're still gonna have to have math, they'll have English, they'll have social studies. I'm leaving out one. There's gonna be 4 classes there, they're gonna have to have their senior.
Just 3.
Right, just 3, oh, 3 and then elective.
3 and elective.
That's right, 3.
Which I think would give them plenty of opportunities to be a minor that you're talking about, I think.
I know what I had in mind was health. 'cause
I wanted to always
They take health
Take
their
a
senior
secondary
year.
class in plumbing.
Right, that's still the case. Most
But I didn't
seniors
have to
take health, right? Yeah. so
Majority of them,
Even though I may have
That's the
failed.
one I'm thinking, yes.
Yep, you start one of them, send him for a week.
yes. But that is good, you can have a shade tree mechanic,
Adult
Jerry
ed.
can teach just a basic mechanic class for some of those kids. You know, Shane can teach a basic plumbing class, I mean, there's room for that.
Well, then we hear all the time about kids need to learn life skills,
skills,
you know, and those are the kind of things that are life skills.
Well, we're in the process, and I'll share with you, sometime down the road, we would like to do a freshman 101, we call it, teach freshmen how to do high school. 'Cause, man, that's a lot of my issues, freshmen.
At that age.
Yes.
And then over on page 19, actually, it lists all of the course options that are available. So what you just looked at on pages 13, 14, 15, those are just kind of general requirements that are required. This actually is more specific about the classes themselves that we can offer.
And notice it says offer, doesn't mean you have to do it, you just have to offer the class, we have kids to sign up for it, and we don't do that.
And like AP, we're required by policy the minimum of 4.
Yeah, each
AP
quarter
courses
has to have an AP
each
class.
year.
And do you have a number that cuts that off, whether you have it or not, number of students?
AP,
Or any of these that you said you
I
might
think
not
it's
offer?
single digits, we look at it hard. It have to be we're thinking 12 is usually the minimum. Now, we have had a class, we did have an AP biology class to keep our, because the state says we have to have a AP course in every subject area. And I think we kept a biology class one time that had 12.
Drivers had a 4-year course.
Yes. No, it's semester. Which that's required. I didn't think that was ever required, Jeff. Did you see that?
Yeah, well, only after you pointed it out to me, I went back and, I've read through this a hundred times.
Driver's ed
It
is
wasn't
not required.
No,
Driver's
it's
ed
in-
is required.
Driver's ed is not required.
It's in there. Required to offer it.
Offered, yeah.
You're
Required to be
right.
offered, I'm sorry.
Offer.
We always have folks sign up for that.
Over on page 21, there is where it spells out about students must be enrolled in a math course each year in high school. That's 5.4.C.4. Just one sentence. And page 22 is the new grading schedule. And then also discusses what that means for weighted courses.
Change the quality.
Over at the bottom of page 23, 5.4.F.2 gets into the discussion about the 80-100 minutes. And it actually says halfway down through that paragraph that if the staff develops a schedule with courses less than 80-100 minutes, and academic achievement is not at or above state proficiency for a minimum of 2 years, the school will then review and adjust the schedule based upon student need and approved by the local Board of Education. So you can drop below 80-100 minutes, and there's a, I'm trying to think what they call, reimagine time. I mean, there's a waiver process you have to go through. But the sky's the limit. You know, I've talked to the State Department several times in the last couple of weeks, and I think just about anything goes. I know we have a neighboring county that's doing some things it's really unique. I don't know if they're being successful or not, but they've been given an opportunity to do some things that, you know,
Okay, the 8100 is typically 45-minute periods times 180 days, right?
That's right. That
equals
equals
8100. But now this says that you conceivably could have a class that's less than 45 minutes in duration
Yeah.
for 180 days and have less than 8100 minutes.
Yeah.
If you show mastery, if
But
you don't
you
show
gotta
mastery,
show-
that's yours, then you gotta.
How do I show that mastery?
I mean, the standards,
On the sum of the
Sum of the
assessment.
assessment.
When I take the test.
And if you're below it after 2 years, then you gotta basically bump it back up or come up with a better plan of action.
If I had a couple, a class or two there, and they all, or a whole bunch of them went downhill,
I would let it go 2 years, I'd tell you that, if it was me, it wouldn't go 2 years.
I said, boy, we shouldn't have had those 24 or 22-minute classes.
Yeah, and,
Well, I mean, do we have any category on the summative assessments where all the students are at mastery level? I mean, if you read this literally,
yeah,
it says,
50% of master, right?
no, it doesn't say 50.
Well, hang on, let me go back.
It says, when developing schedules, the principal and the team teacher will determine the adequate amount of time necessary to achieve mastery of the approved content standards for each program of study. So, by what percentage of students has to master it? As you read that, that's, would be 100% mastery.
That's 100%, yeah, that's 100%.
Yeah,
I don't
so,
think that's just the goal, this, you know, that's,
Yeah,
It's a
that's,
good
yeah, it
But-
was described to me differently when I.
Yes.
All
when I
third
see it,
graders
when
would
I
be
go
at
back.
grade level,
Yes,
be
yes.
promoted.
but I mean, this says you gotta be at mastery to have less than 8,100 hours, or 8,100 minutes, excuse me. Too much regulation, not enough teaching.
But Danny, your classes exceed 45 minutes, right?
we're 49 right now.
Okay. So we don't have to evaluate that, make it 52 or something.
And then over on page 24, and I'll just end with this one, 5.4.F.3, top of page 24. County boards of education have the authority to increase graduation requirements for schools in their counties. County superintendent shall notify the WBDE of any changes in requirements beyond the state requirements. So if the board decides to increase the number of credits required to graduate, then I will have to notify the state.
Now, if you were to do that, you're saying it's 22 that you're increasing beyond, right?
Right, increasing beyond the 22.
If you were to increase beyond, to make it 24, would you have to specify, is it just 2 more electives, or you could
It would
state
be-
what they might be?
Well, we could, I mean, we could be specific about what it's going to be. I mean, the board could say these 2 electives are requirements.
So that's what I mean.
Right.
Or you could tie in a CTE program as an option, or several options, and that being one of them. It's too complicated.
It is complicated. Like I said, and what complicates it even more is that every year, this policy gets revised. So just when you think you've got it nailed down, something gets revised. There is one other thing. I gave you a copy of policy, of our state policy, our county policy, 5460, graduation requirements. And essentially, if you look down in the middle of the page, after the A and the B, you'll see, you're looking at the document. After Part A, Part B, it says the requirements for graduation from high school include earning necessary units of credit in grades 9 through 12 as established in state law and West Virginia State Board of Education Policy 2510. West Virginia State Board of Education Policy 2510 sets forth with specificity, that's a word, mouthful, the graduation requirements for students. So essentially what we're saying here is that the policy essentially is pointing us to policy, our county policy points us to policy 2510. And it doesn't say or spell out that it has to be 22 credits or 24, it just says the necessary. Because again, who knows what will happen next year, policy gets revised again, and you've got a new group of ninth graders coming in, it may have to have 23 credits. I mean,
23 and a half.
23 and a half. So if the board decides to go with the policy 2510, then we're not gonna have to revise this county policy to reflect that, because this is gonna cover us. Now, there are a couple of other things in here, Dan and I, Bill, we looked at, that is gonna have to be revised, that haven't been updated. It just really changes the dates on there.
Mr. Snyder's staff is 50-50, so they're not going either way.
Well, it's, my math, English is 22 is fine because that's what gets tested, I guess. But the others are.
24. Jeff, you know on page 25 here, I guess, the second item answers the first one. 54H1.
Hang on, you're in the policy 2510,
Yeah.
page 25.
Down towards the bottom, 54H1.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Basically, what that says is you gotta be there 4 years all day long.
Mhm.
Then right below it, under 54H2, it says, except, here's some exceptions to it.
Right.
There's exceptions to every rule, every policy that you see.
Yeah,
Just
and
when I thought I had a good one there, I
Yes.
liked.
Yeah. And I believe we
I
have,
found the one right below it.
we have guidelines, administrative guidelines for 5.4.H2.
Well, I think maybe that's something we need to look at. I don't disagree with Rowdy at all. For our students to complete and graduate.
Our policy allows for early graduation. And that's up to individual counties, that's not a state requirement that you allow for graduation.
Our policy allows for it, but according to Mr. Snyder, any student that tried to schedule 2 math, 2 English, 2 social studies classes, math, English, social studies classes in the same year would have been told no.
Well, based on policy, that's not how you early graduate. Based on policy, you have to actually meet with me prior to, and we would come up with, what we would probably do is let you clip out of the class. We'll let you take an end-of-course exam or something for, let's say you went to English 11, clip out English 11 and schedule for English 12 next year. That was our plan, I think, originally.
That
I
sounds
don't like this word clip. What's that mean?
Now,
Clip means you take a test,
Test and pass.
and if you pass it by a certain percentage, and you don't have to take that class, you skip.
you do in college too, used to. That's where the term came from, right? Colleges allow it. But would you get a credit if you
Absolutely.
clipped out of the English 11, you get credit for it?
Because I think when we first started this, again, many years, I'm trying to think, we actually used the, what test was that, Bill, for the vocational students or the minor class, what's it called?
NAEP or
No, it's the, I think that, gosh, I'm dating myself.
I know.
Because we actually still give some credits for that.
You know, this is probably, this conversation probably took place, what, 7, 8
7
years
years
ago?
ago.
I mean, it's, David wrote was
Yes. But there's, if you're in a CT class, you actually get college credit for this class, the EDGE credit. We gave them the EDGE credit in your exam, and if they passed that, they would have gotten credit for the class, because at that time, that was the state
The state
recognized that.
You passed it.
But you're saying this conversation several years ago, they decided they weren't going to permit this? That's what you thought?
Well, going back to what Dana was talking about, yeah, but there was a unique situation we ran in, and honestly, I was in a different role, different capacity at that time. I wasn't privy to everything that was going on. I just know there was a concern about allowing a student to graduate early that year. And again, I don't recall the circumstances behind it. There was some discussion at that time.
It was because she wanted, again, high school credit classes, or college classes she was taking, and the State Department, just, like I said, their head blew up when you said that to them. They didn't respond, so they didn't respond to us, so we didn't respond.
Okay.
So then the decision needs to be made, doesn't have to be made tonight.
Thank you.
Make a decision whether to follow policy 2510 and require 22 credits next year for an incoming ninth grade, or increase it to 24.
What is our current requirement, 24? So we don't have to increase it, we just have to not follow 2510.
We'd have to
Well, the
increase
policy would have to reflect that it would
It says
require
20,
24
they say
credits.
it's 22 next year.
Yeah, but don't we have to accept 2510? Or is it law by the fact that the State Department of
It
Education came down with it?
is, and the board really just has this one opportunity, this option here to determine how many credits students need to graduate.
We'd have to increase based on.
The 22 is the new law unless we change ours and have our own personalized law that says 24.
For 28, like Suffolk County, wherever they are.
26.
Good
26 sounds like a
You
good
said there's a
number.
28?
There is. A neighboring county requires 28 credits. Now, those students get, can earn 8 credits a year because they're on a 9-day day.
But then they're gonna come after us later later because we don't have the graduation rate that they want.
Maybe, or maybe our kids buckle down
Oh,
and do well.
yeah,
Well, I mean, if you have the opportunity now to earn 28 credits. So that gives you the opportunity as a student to bomb 4 classes. 4. To bomb those and still get the minimum necessary credits to graduate. So dropping it to 22 only gives you the opportunity to bomb 6. So you can be 50% more lazy than you were before.
50% more lazy.
Yeah, 50% more lazy. I mean, come on.
don't bomb math or English, or social studies.
As long as it's electives, right?
Right.
Not to require
Just-
classes.
But, you know, electives are important to kids, and somebody touched on it earlier.
Right.
When you're 16, 17, 18, you may have a career path picked out. Mommy and daddy or your uncle or your TV hero may have convinced you that you want to be X, Y, or Z. You hit the real world at 18, 19, and you suddenly change what you want to do. What electives in high school do, be it CTE, dance, art, whatever, they give these impressionable students exposure to different areas. Mandatory exposure, mind you, they got to be there throughout the whole year, but they get exposure. So later in life, when they mature a little more, like, wait, well, you know, maybe I don't want to be this accountant that I've always thought I wanted to be.
I
But
want to be a
boy,
lawyer.
I really liked that social studies course or that CTE course that I took, and I want to be this agricultural mechanic that Mr. Snyder mentioned a moment ago. So when you cut the electives, you kind of narrow the focus of these kids, the exposure that our kids who are particularly sheltered as a will have. So,
I may want to take drama.
absolutely. The broader your base in high school, the more opportunities that are available to you in college, at least in your own mind, or in the workforce in your own mind. I mean, has anyone in here not had to do something in your life that you thought you would hate? Once you got involved, and you thought, you know, this is kind of cool.
Sure.
I really don't hate this. And it may not be something you want to do in your free time the rest of your life, but at least you don't have a negative opinion of it. And if you don't have these mandatory elective requirements to take something, I know, Mr. Snyder, you said we're having a real hard time filling electives for our seniors. Okay, got to be something they can take to get these credits. And I'm not advocating that we don't adopt this policy at 22 hours. But I think we have to keep the kids busy. I think we have to give them opportunities to be exposed to other things to stimulate them. Otherwise, we're going to have exactly what I think, was it Bill said? We have kids that have gotten lazy their senior year, have forgotten how to study, forgotten what it's like to work hard. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility given to us here on a lot of fronts, a lot of things we're looking at, a lot of things we've talked about tonight. So, anyway.
There's a financial literacy class being developed right now, which I think is just awesome that'd be for seniors to take as an elective.
Our ROTC fellow is actually teaching one of those now.
Is that right?
Military.
I mean, just like it's in a checkbook, you know, I mean, that's a skill, life skill, you know.
I gave up with my 19-year-old when I opened her a checking account before she started college. Dad, well, I don't need to look at these statements that are coming to me. I don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
I look at my balance and I look at the things I put on my debit card. Oh, they still written a check. It's a debit card. And so long as I've got money in there, I'm okay, right? Yeah, in the most generalist of senses, yes. So long as you have enough money to cover your expenses. But the idea of balancing a checkbook, reconciling a statement, things that I knew how to do because I was doing them, kids today don't know how to do and probably never will unless we have classes like that. And, you know, if we're, I mean, I guess, if we have kids and when we don't have some kind of provision for early graduation, kids still have to go to class all day long. And kids that care about their graduation GPA are going to have to do enough in whatever electives they take to get decent grades, because everything counts towards your ultimate GPA. But it's not that group of kids that we have to worry about. It's the group that we talk about falling, the 80%. You know, when you get toward kids that have had some problems before academically, if they only need 22 hours to graduate and they don't care about a GPA, that's just 2 more classes they're not going to turn they're not gonna crack a book in,
It
right?
might even be disrupted.
Yeah.
God forbid.
We see
So,
that happen.
I mean, there are a lot of different factors that go into this. I mean, I don't wanna hold people back from getting more exposure by having more credit, more graduation, a higher graduation credit, hour credit. But you gotta look at all sides of this. There's negatives and positives no matter which direction we go. And I can make the argument both ways at both 22 and 24 hours.
If we have, continue with the 8-period day, it doesn't matter. We'll still have 24 credits those kids can get. I guess that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter, we talk 22 or 24. If we stay with this 8-period day, they have one lunch, they still have 7 periods, 4 years, that's 28 credits. So we still have to have electives somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
We're just saying you have to have 22 to walk across the stage.
Let me ask you this. In high school now, over at LCHS, if that's our own high school, are there, like when I was in school, aid classes? You get to be an aide to a teacher that has no credit requirements?
We don't do that.
Okay. So kids have to attempt, being the operative word, 28 credits.
Yes.
You worked in the office, didn't you?
I was an aide several,
I don't know how you pulled that off, you know, I was over there, head of you, and I was never an aide. Really? I mean, how'd you do that?
I ask.
You asked.
Look, I had a kind of strong personality early on, and I was able to persuade people
Yeah.
of
But
the
that's what
merits,
you need
of
to
the
do.
merits of things that I thought ought to happen.
There were a lot of teachers that didn't want it. And they voted yes. Pretty good day.
I begged to double up on classes. Yes, I was a geek, I was a nerd, all right? Still am, but, you know, I went into school and got everything I knew in the 9th grade what I needed to have when I graduated. I kept track of it and all of those things, and I probably didn't have a credit or two more than I was required to have because I, would be an aide to a teacher here and there once a year. I knew how many credits I had to have, and that's exactly what I got, plus maybe 1 or 2. And look at me now. What a failure I am. I mean, narrow exposure and
Hurry up, Jeff.
it's getting deep.
He's getting that easy stuff.
Well, I was totally different. I was just gonna be a housewife and marry a teacher and live wealthy. I found out differently, and so I became a nurse.
See, you could have been in a 2-course or whatever you call it, taking your major and then going into nursing as a secondary minor and happily ever after, Eddie wouldn't have to work 5 jobs.
I tell everyone the story, my freshman year, at that time, they assembled everyone in the gym at Guy Valley, and they started with the seniors, and you had to go around and schedule your classes for the year. I mean, just imagine being a 14-year-old kid, new to this high school, and going around, I mean, and I'd go from one teacher to the next, and I'd say, this class is full. I mean, it's like being in college almost, So at the end of the day, Lottie Midkiff was my homeroom teacher. So I started the day with her. I came back at the end of the day with my schedule. And I mean, it was very stressful that day. Never forget.
I remember when you all had to do that.
And she said, Jeff, let me see your schedule. So I show it to her. She looks at it. She looks at me. You know how she just had that look, about her. And she just wads it up and throws it in the garbage. She said, you'll have a new schedule in the morning. Go ahead and have a seat. So for the next 4 years, she had my schedule for me. And there wasn't any aid classes in there. I mean, it was on, But anyway, that was my experience.
I think I got my PE. We didn't have the PE credit waiver if you play football, but, you could be an aide and PE teacher, sometimes things work.
Or the football coach.
Yeah. Or the assistant Andy Van Fine. There's a lot of work for Coach Van Fine, so we won't go into the details.
You learned a lot though, didn't you?
I learned a lot about
Life
a life outside of Lincoln County,
The real world, right?
the real world.
Life skills.
I won't go into any more detail.
No, I really would. Okay, is that all that topic I have?
I think we've exhausted it for
I
the season.
think we sure have. We will revisit that sometime. Mr. Snyder, we appreciate your input. I'm sure that we'll ask you to come back at some point, so there may, we delve into this, have some more questions and all. And if there's anything that, from your staff that they feel like that we need to place emphasis on, we'd appreciate hearing that.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move to the administrative section. Have a motion, please.
I'll move.
Mr. Baker.
Second.
Mrs. Smith. Mr. Mickey.
Okay, item A, school volunteers who on occasion may also serve as bus chaperones for athletic events, academic competition, or school outings that have completed volunteer orientation. Item B is out-of-county student transfers for the 2017-2018 school year. Item C, to declare the following as surplus property and offer for public auction on April 21st, 2018 at Lincoln County High School, according to the provisions of West Virginia Code 18-5-7. I don't know if you all have seen the red and white truck we have out there.
Yeah.
That we created now. But anyway, that's, the VOAG's having their auctions. Mr. Neal referenced it when he spoke to you earlier tonight. So that date is on the Saturday, the 21st.
That's just coming.
This coming Saturday. Item D is out-of-state trip for Lincoln County High School students to Louisville, Kentucky, April the 25th through the 28th, 2018, to attend the Robotics Next World Championships, funded through special education. Item E, out-of-state trip for West Hamlin Elementary 5th grade class to Great Wolf Lodge, Newport Aquarium in Mason, Ohio, by charter bus, May 23rd, 24th, 2018, funded through the PTO. Item F, an agreement with the following as a supervisory aid for the 2017-2018 school year, according to the provisions of West Virginia Code 18A-5-8. Item G, out-of-state travel for the following personnel. Item H, to award a contract to the following as low bidders for roof replacements on various school facilities according to specifications contained in bid spec document as listed below. And there's also an attachment. I will let you know that Ray and I, Greg, met with Mike Hall from the SBA today. The bids came in way under estimate for those 5 roof projects. We have written a letter to the SBA requesting that we be able to use the remaining funds to put a roof on West Hamlin Elementary School. And very optimistic that may happen. And so we may work this out and do all the schools. We won't know until June the 18th, I think. Mike, he said that I need to be up there, which I always go to those meetings when they're handing out money, but he asked if we'd be up there. I think he wants you up there too, he doesn't want me traveling alone. But we'll be up there.
So the very big unforeseen issue amount, the 366 for unforeseen issues would include potentially the 213 for West Hamlin. I'm just looking at Greg's.
Ray, you want to answer that question?
Greg's letter says.
Financial piece.
Greg's letter says the total award is 842. This allows 366,000 for unforeseen circumstances, which seems pretty big to me.
It is a big
Well,
But then he says 213 if funding available for West Hamlin.
yeah, I think what he's meaning, those bids, we were thinking that they were gonna come in more along the lines of like $1.2 million, and they came in at 800 and some thousand. So
Okay.
he's saying for unforeseen circumstances, it might be the remainder of that money promised from the SBA and our local match.
Okay.
But if we're approved, we can stick West Hamlin in there. We'll still be under the initial budget that we had when we went to the SBA in the first place.
And the board would not have to ante up any additional money either. Mike made that clear today. So if this works out the way we think it's going to, it's not going to cost us any more money to include West Hamlin.
Yeah, there's a percentage that they have. It's like 87-13 or 86-14 is the percentage SBA money to local match, and it'll stay that way through all of those roofs as we do them. So it's not like we're gonna use all SBA money for 800 and some thousand. We're still gonna have to use part of our 209,000 that we said we would match, but it's just gonna be based on the percentage of the whole project.
Now, does this roof at Guy Valley include roofing gymnasium as well?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're already discussing, possible needs projects for next year. And what we talked to Mike about today is gymnasium upgrades, Guy Valley and Hammond. So he made out like that's also a possibility. And he was great this past go-around with us, preparing us for the needs project, so we're gonna stick to his hip. And that's all I have.
Well, let me just throw something out, this will be short up. Is there any rhyme or reason, I mean, and you all may be able to answer this, I didn't look at the actual bids for each of these schools, but did each of these companies bid on each of these schools, and they were just certain contractors were lower on a certain school than on others?
Some didn't bid on all the schools,
Okay.
and some did.
Uh-huh.
And the way the bid was wrote up, that we could take what was in the best interest of the board, so we could, give one contractor everything, or we
Or
could split it up.
Parcel it out?
And, so we just took the lowest, and I think Tri-State, or Fairfax got two of them, and they're the ones who got the bid for West Hamlin, if we're able to go through with that. So, yeah, it was real competitive. I mean, whenever they had the pre-bid meeting, this room was full.
There was, what, 9 companies, I believe, actually, 9, 10?
There was
There's a room
16,
full.
17 people in here, so it could have been 9 companies and that many people got there.
Which is a good thing.
Put a roof on the football field.
Just didn't write it up there.
Straight line.
Okay, everybody's seen the administrative items as explained by Mr. McKiff. Is that an all yes on that? The finance section, motion please. Fred?
Second.
Larry? Okay. Ray again.
A, payment of membership subscription fees to the West Virginia School Board Association for the 2019 fiscal year totaling $3,434, paid with county funds, and schedule of invoices totaling $426,391.12. That list is attached.
All right, Mr. Ellis presented those. Any questions? If not, is that an all yes vote?
Yes.
Okay. Personnel section.
I move.
Carol? Second. Carol made the motion, Rowley seconded that one. Yeah.
Okay, it's a long one.
It
This
is.
is all our transfers and probationary and everything else. Item A, employment of short, long-term substitute professional personnel. Item B, transfer of professional personnel. There is a correction, JDI's, number 4 should be Hamlin PKA 5th grade teacher instead of PE teacher going to 8th grade. That should be 5th grade going to 8th grade. Item C, transfer of service personnel. Then we have, next page is employment of short-term substitute professional personnel for school year 2018-19. These are our certified retired teachers. The next one is employment of short, long-term substitute professional personnel pending renewal of certification for the school. Years 2018-19, short-term, long-term subs through RESA. Next one is employment of short, long-term substitute professional personnel for school year 2018, short-term, long-term through RESA. Then the next one is reemployment of professional personnel to be issued a probationary contract for the school year 2018-19. Then we have reemployment of professional personnel pending renewal of certification to be issued a probationary contract for school year 2018-19. The last one in that category, Richard McCann, that should say Harts PKA instead of Lincoln County High School. In the middle there. Okay, the next one is reemployment of professional personnel to be issued a continuing contract for school year 2018-19. The last one on that page is reemployment of professional personnel pending renewal of certification be issued and continuing contract for school year 2018-19. The next one is reemployment of service personnel to be issued a probationary contract for school year 18-19. Then reemployment of service personnel to be issued continuing contract for school year 18-19. Then employment of substitute service personnel for school year 2018-19. And transfer of professional personnel for school year 2018-19 per West Virginia Code 18A-27. Termination of professional personnel for school year 2018-19 per Code 18A-22. Then termination of service personnel per Code 18A-2-6 to be placed on preferred recall list. And then the last one on that page is termination of extracurricular contracts, athletic and professional in service. And that carries us all the way over to, I believe, the last page. At the top of that, abolish the following positions at the conclusion of 2017-18 school year. Guyan Valley Middle School, Title I, Hamlin PK8, Title I, Hamlin PK8, Grade 3, Duval PK8, Title I, Midway Elementary, Title I, and service positions 2A, 2.5As at the high school. Item D, leave of absence, and item E, retirement and resignations over there in effective date, June 30th, 2018. That should also say retire for Timmy McAllister. Abolish professional personnel posting, PGV 1849, Guyan Valley Teacher Service, severe profound with autism. That should have been posted with multi-cap with autism. And then correct the minutes of April 3rd to read Justin Reed, Hamlin Custodian 3, 226 days. And then we also have that over here under B on the personnel to correct minutes for the April 3rd, 2018, Justin Reed, April Hamlin PK8 custodian days from 2:30 to 2:26. And I gave you a handout. And this is currently what we have. We'll be posting these tomorrow. The ones with asterisk beside them are for positions for this year. The other ones are for positions for next year. We hope to post, as soon as the board, you guys vote, we're gonna try to post them the next day and try to keep that cycle going so we can get all of them there. If you look, special ed, and if you look at service, 2 bus operators. You know where we are with bus operators. We have a couple, 3 subs, and if they get hired, we're gonna be hurting if we don't get more subs, and we work at that. Also down at the bottom, we abolished these extracurricular, the coaching positions for 18-19 will be posted on April 25th, and summer positions will be posted on May 2nd. That's our credit recovery, extended school year, and those positions during the summer.
Will all the summer positions be posted at the same time, Bill?
Yes, sir.
Personnel department's been busy,
Yeah.
and I don't know whether Susie's involved or who does his contracts, but good luck to you. It's a good thing you're getting a head start.
Well, we was very fortunate this year that we didn't have to make cuts like a lot of other counties. You know, we talked to Leslie, and he said, well, I've been in Wayne, we've got 20-some cuts, we're having to have all these hearings, you know, the mess that Cabell's in and a lot of the other counties, so fortunately, everyone's here for the year, through the years have looked at it yearly and tried to make those cuts and stay within. It's hard to stay within, you know, we're 2 or 3 older, so.
If you let it get away from you, then you end up in those circumstances. Okay, if anybody have any questions, if not, done all yes on personnel items?
Yes.
Okay, board members, any comments, questions, concerns, anything? Ms. Mickey, any?
I'd like to Request a legal, an executive session to provide the board with a legal update.
Okay, you don't have any other motions other than that? Okay, Mr. Meekin, there is a personnel session to discuss legal, personnel legal updates. Motion to go into executive session. Mr. Baker,
Second.
second by Ms. Smith. Got an all yes vote?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, at 8 p.m.